My wife Elena looked at me with cold, dead eyes as she threw my suitcase onto the wet pavement of our $6 million Chicago driveway, while the locksmith changed the front door bolts. At 55 years old, I was being charged with embezzling $1.2 million from the architectural firm I founded, a crime orchestrated by Elena and my trusted young assistant, Mark Miller. They thought they had buried me under a mountain of forged documents and public shame, but they forgot about the one man who still owed me a life-altering favor from 20 years ago. My name is Arthur Sterling, a professional architect who spent 32 years building Apex Design into the most respected firm in Illinois, only to watch my legacy vanish in a single rainy afternoon. I lived for my work and my family in our Gold Coast mansion, never suspecting that the two people I trusted most were spending my hard-earned money to plan my ultimate professional destruction. I gave Mark Miller everything, including a senior partnership and a key to my home, because I saw a younger version of myself in his hungry eyes and his relentless architectural ambition. Elena was the light of my life for 25 years, and I provided her with designer clothes, luxury vacations, and a social status that few women in the city could ever hope to achieve. I grew up in a small, blue-collar house in Cicero, working 3 jobs to pay for my degree, always believing that hard work and integrity would be the shield that protected my future. By the time I reached my 50s, Apex Design was responsible for half the skyline, and I felt a deep sense of pride every time I looked at the steel and glass structures. I treated Mark like the son I never had, teaching him the nuances of structural integrity and how to negotiate the complex building codes that govern the massive development projects we handled. Elena always seemed supportive of my long hours at the drafting table, often bringing me coffee and telling me how proud she was of the empire I was building for our family's future. Our daughter, Sarah, was the center of my universe, and I made sure she attended the best private schools and never wanted for anything, wanting her to have the life I never did. The cracks began to show 6 months ago when I noticed small discrepancies in the project accounts for the new Riverside Plaza development, but I foolishly dismissed them as simple accounting errors. I noticed Mark and Elena spending more time together, discussing what they called marketing strategies for the firm, while I was busy on-site managing the actual construction and the difficult union workers. One night, I came home early from a site inspection in Springfield to find Mark's car in my driveway, even though he was supposed to be at a corporate dinner in New York City. I walked into my own living room and heard their laughter coming from the kitchen, a sound that felt like a serrated blade cutting through the 25 years of marriage I cherished. They were sitting at the Marble Island, drinking a vintage bottle of Bordeaux I had been saving for our anniversary, looking over a stack of legal documents that had my forged signature. When I confronted them, Mark didn't even look guilty. He just smirked and told me that the board of directors had already seen the evidence of my supposed embezzlement from the firm. Elena stood up, adjusted her diamond necklace, and calmly explained that she had filed for divorce and that a restraining order would be served to me by the morning for her safety. I stood there in my mud-stained work boots, feeling the entire world collapse beneath me, as the woman I loved told me I was a pathetic relic who had outlived his usefulness. The next morning, the board of directors at Apex Design met in the glass-walled conference room I designed, and they voted unanimously to terminate my position as the chief executive officer. Mark had presented them with a trail of digital breadcrumbs and bank transfers that appeared to show I had been funneling company funds into a secret offshore account for over 3 years. I tried to explain that I had never even visited the Cayman Islands, but the evidence was so professionally fabricated that even my own lawyers seemed to doubt my desperate and shaky claims. When I reached out to Sarah, hoping for a shred of comfort, she screamed at me through the phone, calling me a liar and a cheat who had destroyed our family's reputation. Elena had spent weeks whispering in Sarah's ear, showing her doctored photos and fake messages that suggested I was having an affair with a much younger woman from the drafting department. I was forced into a cheap, one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood I hadn't visited since my college days, watching the local news as Mark and Elena were celebrated as the new power. Every morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., a habit from my years on construction sites, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand how I could have been so blind to their cruelty. My bank accounts were frozen, my reputation was in tatters, and the legal fees were draining the last of the cash I had hidden in a small safe deposit box at the bank. I spent my days in the public library, using their computers to dig through years of digital archives, looking for any mistake Mark might have made while he was stealing my entire life. The betrayal felt like a physical weight on my chest, a constant pressure that made it hard to breathe every time I saw a billboard featuring the firm's logo and Mark's smug face. Mark began appearing in architectural magazines, taking credit for designs I had spent years perfecting, while Elena stood by his side at every high society gala and charity event in the city. The loneliness was a cold, sharp thing that followed me through the aisles of the grocery store as I counted my pennies to buy basic supplies and cheap cans of generic soup. I felt like a ghost in the city I had built, walking past the steel skeletons of buildings I had designed, knowing that my name had been erased from the official records of history. Just as the bank was preparing to foreclose on the small apartment, and my hope was nearly extinguished, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in 2 decades of working. The voice on the other end was raspy and authoritative, belonging to David Vance, a man who had once been my fiercest rival in the high-stakes world of Chicago's competitive urban development. 20 years ago, I had discovered a fatal structural flaw in one of David's bridge projects, and instead of exposing him and ruining his career, I helped him fix it in secret. I had spent 3 days and nights working beside him under the bridge, using my own equipment and crew to ensure the structure wouldn't collapse and kill hundreds of innocent Chicago commuters. David never forgot that I chose human life over professional competition, and he had been watching the news of my downfall with a growing sense of suspicion and deep-seated personal debt. He told me to meet him at a secluded diner on the south side, a place where the elite architects didn't dare to venture, and to bring every piece of documentation I had. When I arrived, David was sitting in a corner booth, looking older but still possessing the sharp, predatory eyes that had made him a legend in the construction and design industry. He slid a black USB drive across the table and told me that his own private security team had been tracking Mark Miller's digital activities for months out of professional curiosity and spite. David explained that Mark had been using a specific server at an offshore data center that David's company happened to own through a complex series of international holding companies and shell corporations. The drive contained every original email, every unedited bank transfer, and most importantly, a series of recorded video calls between Elena and Mark where they discussed the exact details of the framing. I felt a surge of cold adrenaline as I watched a video of Mark laughing about how easy it was to forge my signature on the Riverside Plaza embezzlement documents using my tablet. Elena was on the screen, her voice filled with a chilling lack of emotion, saying that I was too focused on integrity to ever realize that the people around me were hungry. David Vance looked at me and said that the debt from 20 years ago was finally settled, and he offered his top legal team to help me reclaim what was rightfully mine. We spent the next week meticulously organizing the evidence, preparing a legal strike that would be so swift and devastating that Mark and Elena wouldn't have time to hide the money. I learned that Mark and Elena were planning a massive merger celebration at the Apex Design headquarters, which also happened to be the day they were announcing their formal engagement to society. I arrived at the building I had designed, wearing my best suit, which now hung slightly loose on my frame after months of stress and the forced diet of a broken, discarded man. The lobby was filled with the city's elite, the very people who had turned their backs on me, all drinking expensive champagne and toasted to the visionary leadership of Mark and Elena. I waited until Mark took the stage, standing under a giant projection of the Riverside Plaza project, his hand resting possessively on Elena's waist as she smiled for the many flashing cameras. Just as he started his speech about the new era of innovation, the large screens behind him flickered and changed from the architectural renderings to the video of their private betrayal meeting. The room went deathly silent as Elena's voice filled the speakers, clearly explaining how she had manipulated our daughter and how Mark had stolen the funds from the Riverside Plaza project account. I walked slowly through the center of the crowd, the sea of socialites parting for me like I was a ghost returned from the grave to claim his rightful and long overdue vengeance. Mark's face turned a ghostly shade of gray as he looked from the screen to me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, while Elena gripped the podium. The police, who had been waiting in the wings with David Vance's legal team, stepped forward and placed Mark and Elena in handcuffs in front of the entire Chicago architectural community. The charges weren't just for embezzlement, but for corporate fraud, identity theft, and the systematic destruction of a multi-million-dollar entity through illegal and highly coordinated digital manipulation and criminal conspiracy. As they were being led away, Elena looked at me with a desperate plea for mercy, but I simply turned my back on her, the same way she had done to me. Our daughter, Sarah, was standing in the back of the room, her face drenched in tears of shame and realization as she saw the monster her mother truly was behind the mask. She ran to me, sobbing and apologizing for believing the lies. And though my heart was still wounded, I held her tightly, knowing that the truth had finally set us both free. David Vance walked up to me, shook my hand firmly, and told the remaining board members that his company would be backing my return as the sole owner and CEO of Apex. The board members, who had once voted to cast me out, were now scrambling to apologize and offer their support, but I told them that their services were no longer required at Apex. I spent the next few months cleaning house, removing everyone who had been complicit in Mark's schemes, and rebuilding the firm with people who valued the integrity I had always championed. I moved back into my Gold Coast home, but it felt different now, no longer a monument to a false marriage, but a quiet sanctuary where I could finally find some real peace. Mark and Elena were both sentenced to 15 years in a federal penitentiary, their dreams of power and luxury replaced by the cold reality of a prison cell and a ruined reputation. I used the recovered funds to create a scholarship for aspiring architects from blue-collar backgrounds, ensuring that the next generation would have a path based on merit and hard work. Sarah and I spend a lot of time together, slowly rebuilding our relationship through long walks and honest conversations about the family we thought we had and the one we were creating. I recently sat on the balcony of my office, looking out at the Chicago skyline, seeing the buildings I designed glowing in the twilight like beacons of a life lived with purpose. I realized that while they took my money, my house, and my position for a short time, they could never actually steal the skill and the character that built those things. The city looks different to me now, less like a collection of monuments to my own ego and more like a testament to the fact that truth always finds its way home. I am Arthur Sterling. I am 55 years old, and I have learned that the strongest structures are not made of steel and glass, but of the truth we tell ourselves. I am back in the captain's chair of the company I built with my own two hands, and this time, the foundations are built on something that no betrayal can ever truly shake. My daughter is now an intern at the firm, learning the business from the ground up, and watching her grow fills the empty spaces that Elena's betrayal once left in my soul. David Vance and I have become close friends, often meeting at that same Southside diner to discuss new projects and the importance of remembering who helped you along the way. The Riverside Plaza is finally complete, and when I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I didn't feel the need to boast or brag about the victory I had won over my enemies. I simply looked at the crowd, saw the pride in my daughter's eyes, and knew that the legacy I was leaving behind was finally untarnished and built on a foundation of absolute. I am no longer the man who was thrown out into the rain, but a man who has walked through the fire and come out stronger, wiser, and more at peace with himself. The suitcase Elena threw on the pavement is gone, replaced by a life of meaning and a business that stands as a symbol of resilience in the heart of the city. I wake up every morning at 5 a.m., but I no longer stare at the ceiling in fear. Instead, I look out at the sunrise and prepare for a new day. There is a quiet dignity in the way the office hums with activity now, a sense of shared purpose that was missing when Mark and Elena were poisoning the atmosphere with greed. I have forgiven Elena for my own sake, though I will never speak to her again, because carrying that anger is like trying to build a skyscraper on a shifting sand foundation. My name is on the door again, not because of a title or a legal document, but because the people of this city know that Arthur Sterling stands for something real. I have reclaimed my home, my company, and my daughter's love, and in the end, those are the only treasures that truly matter in this long and often difficult journey of life. I am an architect of buildings, but more importantly, I have become the architect of my own second chance, and this time, the design is perfect in every single way. The rain that once felt like a symbol of my defeat now feels like a cleansing force, washing away the old lies and making room for the new truths I live by. I stand on the balcony of the penthouse I designed, looking over the lake, and I finally know what it means to be a man of true and lasting integrity. The sunset over the water is a deep, burning orange, a reminder that even the longest day must come to an end before a brand new one can begin again. I am whole, I am respected, and I am finally surrounded by people who see me for who I am, not for what they can take from my bank account. The secret USB drive sits in my desk drawer, a reminder of the man who saved my life and the lesson that kindness is the best investment you can ever make. I walk through the lobby of my building, and the staff greets me with genuine smiles, a small detail that tells me I have succeeded in building a healthy corporate culture. My daughter Sarah is designing her first small residential project, and when I look at her sketches, I see the same passion and honesty that I felt 40 years ago today. We are a family again, smaller and perhaps a bit more scarred, but we are bound by something much stronger than the superficial luxury that Elena once craved so very desperately. I am 55, I am an architect in the great city of Chicago, and I am exactly where I am supposed to be, living a life of quiet and hard-earned dignity. The blueprints for my future are clear, and for the first time in a long time, I am excited to see what the next chapter of this story will finally bring. I have learned that betrayal is a storm that can shake your house, but if your foundation is deep enough, you will still be standing when the clouds eventually clear away. I am Arthur Sterling, and I am finally home, standing tall among the skyscrapers I helped to create, ready to face whatever the world decides to throw at me next time. The city hums below me, a constant reminder of the life and energy I have contributed to, and I feel a profound sense of gratitude for every single difficult moment. I look at the photo of Sarah on my desk and I smile, knowing that she will never have to doubt the character of the man who raised her with love. The legal battles are over, the debts are settled, and the only thing left to do is to keep building, one brick and one honest day at a time, forever. I am free from the weight of the past, free from the lies of the woman I loved, and free to be the man I was always meant to become. The office is quiet now as the sun dips below the horizon, and I take a deep breath of the cool evening air, feeling the peace I never thought possible. I have won, not just the legal case or the company, but the battle for my own soul and the right to walk through this world with my head held high. The architectural world knows my story, and while it was a painful journey, it is a story of a reversal that restored a man's dignity and exposed a cold-hearted truth. I am Arthur Sterling, and this is the story of how I lost everything and gained the only things that truly mattered in the end of my long life. My story is one of steel, glass, and the unbreakable spirit of a man who refused to be buried by the people who claimed to love him the most. I am an architect, a father, and a survivor, and as I close my eyes for a brief moment of rest, I know that my legacy is finally and completely secure. The city of Chicago stands tall around me, and I stand tall among the giants, a man who found his way back from the darkness and into the bright light. I am finally at peace with the man in the mirror, and that is a victory that no amount of money or power could ever hope to buy for anyone. The blueprints are rolled up, the lights are dimmed, and I am ready to step out into the evening, a man who has reclaimed his life and his true purpose. I will continue to build, to design, and to live with the integrity that has always been my true north, no matter what storms may come across the lake. My name is Arthur Sterling, and I am the architect of my own destiny, standing on a foundation that is as solid as the bedrock of this great city. The lights of the city begin to twinkle like diamonds in the dark, and I realize that my life is just beginning to shine with a new and brilliant light. I walk out of the building, the cool air touching my face, and I know that I am finally, truly, and completely free to live my own life on my terms. The past is a memory, the future is a promise, and the present is a gift that I will never again take for granted as long as I live. I am a man of the city, a man of the drafting table, and a man who has learned the true meaning of the word family through the fire of betrayal. I am back, I am strong, and I am ready for the next project, the next challenge, and the next beautiful day in the city I love so very much. My daughter is waiting for me at the diner, and as I drive toward her, I feel a sense of joy that is as pure and clear as crystal. The story of the architect's betrayal is over, and the story of the architect's legacy is just beginning to be written in the stone and steel of this world. I am Arthur Sterling, and I am exactly where I should be, living a life of truth, dignity, and a love that is finally and completely real in every way. The night is young, the city is vibrant, and I am a man who has found his way back home to the only place that truly matters in the end. I look up at the stars, and I see the infinite possibilities of a life lived with honesty, and I smile as I step into the light of the future. The world is a beautiful place when you are no longer hiding from the truth, and I am proud to be a part of the beauty I helped create. I am finally whole, I am finally home, and I am finally the man I was always meant to be in this long and winding journey of my life. My name is Arthur Sterling, and this is my story, a story of betrayal, reversal, and the enduring power of a man who refused to give up on the truth. I am an architect of the soul, and the structure I have built is one that will stand for all of eternity, regardless of the storms that may come. I am ready for the morning, ready for the work, and ready for the life that I have fought so hard to reclaim from the hands of the betrayers. The city sleeps, but I am wide awake, filled with the energy of a new beginning and the peace of a man who has finally found his way. I am Arthur Sterling, and I am home.